Heartless bikers laugh at a shy teen at a gas station. The truth about him freezes them. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the quiet town. At the edge of the main road, a lonely gas station flickered with neon lights. The hum of crickets filled the air as Caleb pulled up on his battered moped, the engine sputtering before it finally went silent. He climbed off the seat and adjusted his oversized denim jacket, the collar frayed from years of wear. Caleb kept his head down as he walked to the pump, his dark brown hair falling into his eyes. He wasn't the kind of kid who drew attention, just the opposite. At 16, he was wiry and awkward, with a quiet demeanor that made him an easy target for ridicule. As Caleb fumbled with the pump nozzle, the sound of roaring engines broke through the stillness. A dozen motorcycles rumbled into the gas station, their chrome glinting under the fluorescent lights. The bikers dismounted one by one, their leather vests emblazoned with the names Iron Fangs. The leader, a burly man with a scar running down his cheek, surveyed the gas station with a smirk. "Looks like we've got company," Scarface said, nodding toward Caleb. The rest of the gang turned to look, their laughter echoing as they took in the sight of the skinny teen standing next to his moped. One of them, a younger biker with a toothpick in his mouth, whistled mockingly. "Hey kid," Toothpick shouted. "You lose a bet or something? What kind of ride is that?" Caleb flinched but didn't respond. He focused on the gas pump, willing himself to stay calm. The bikers weren't satisfied with his silence. "Looks like he's too scared to talk," another biker jeered. "Hey, maybe we should help him upgrade that piece of junk. I hear tricycles are more his speed." Scarface walked closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. He stopped a few feet away from Caleb, crossing his arms. "What's the matter, kid? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too good to talk to us?" Caleb looked up briefly, his hazel eyes meeting Scarface's cold gaze. "I'm just trying to fill my tank," he said quietly. "I don't want any trouble." The gang erupted in laughter, as if his words were the punchline to a joke. Toothpick stepped forward and kicked the back wheel of Caleb's moped, sending it toppling to the ground. "Oops," he said with a grin. "Guess it's not as sturdy as it looks." Caleb's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to relax. He bent down to pick up the moped, his movements slow and deliberate. "Please," he said, his voice steady. "I just want to leave." Scarface crouched next to Caleb, his grin menacing. "What's the rush? We're just having a little fun. Besides, you don't look like you're going anywhere fast on this thing." The gang laughed again, the sound grating against Caleb's nerves. He straightened up, brushing dirt off his jacket, and looked Scarface in the eye. For the first time, there was a hint of steel in his gaze. "You really don't want to do this," Caleb said, his voice calm but firm. The bikers froze for a moment, taken aback by the shift in his tone. But Scarface quickly recovered, his grin widening. "Oh yeah? And why is that, kid? You gonna call your mommy?" Caleb didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, unassuming keychain. Dangling from it was a medallion with an emblem the bikers didn't recognize. A sleek eagle with outstretched wings, encircled by the words Division 7. The atmosphere shifted. Caleb's calm demeanor and the mysterious keychain sent a ripple of unease through the group, though they couldn't quite explain why. Toothpick frowned, his earlier bravado faltering. "What's that supposed to be?" Caleb met his gaze, his expression unreadable. "Just a reminder," he said cryptically. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to leave." Scarface hesitated, his instincts warning him that something about this kid wasn't right. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. He reached for Caleb's shoulder, intending to shove him, when the sound of tires screeching to a halt broke through the tension. Everyone turned to see two black SUVs pulling into the gas station. The vehicles were sleek and unmarked, their windows tinted so dark that nothing inside was visible. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances as the SUV doors opened and several men in suits stepped out. They moved with purpose, their expressions stern as they scanned the scene. One of them, a tall man with sharp features, walked straight toward Caleb. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his voice firm but respectful. "Are you all right?" The bikers stared in disbelief as Caleb nodded, his earlier shyness replaced by quiet authority. "I'm fine," he said. But these gentlemen were just about to apologize. Scarface's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. The realization that they had messed with someone far beyond their understanding hit them like a freight train. The men in suits stood silently, their presence imposing. One adjusted his earpiece, scanning the bikers with a look that could cut steel. Scarface, who had always prided himself on never backing down, felt his bravado waver. This wasn't the kind of fight he was used to. Toothpick, fidgeting nervously, whispered to one of the other bikers, "Who the hell are these guys? And why are they talking to the kid like he's someone important?" Scarface stepped forward, his attempt to regain control evident in his puffed-up chest. "Hey, what's going on here?" he barked, addressing the suited man who had spoken to Caleb. "This is just a little misunderstanding. No need to get all official." The tall man turned his gaze to Scarface, his expression cool and unreadable. "A misunderstanding? I'd call it a grave miscalculation," he said. "Do you have any idea who you've been harassing?" Scarface faltered but managed to reply, "He's just some punk kid. We weren't doing anything serious." The man stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "That's punk kid is Caleb Reeves. And if you knew what was good for you, you'd walk away right now." Caleb remained silent, watching the bikers squirm under the scrutiny of the suited men. He didn't enjoy the attention, but he also wasn't going to let himself be pushed around. His father's lessons echoed in his mind. Stay calm. Never show fear. Let your actions speak louder than words. Caleb's father, Colonel James Reeves, had been a decorated officer in the military, working on classified missions for a top-secret division known as Division 7. The medallion Caleb carried wasn't just a trinket. It was a symbol of his father's legacy and a connection to the powerful organization that had quietly kept tabs on him ever since his father's death. Though Caleb had no formal ties to Division 7, his late father's reputation had afforded him certain protections. The men in suits were part of the organization, tasked with ensuring Caleb's safety whenever he was in danger. They had been monitoring him from a distance, stepping in only when necessary. The bikers' laughter and bravado had long since disappeared. Scarface glanced at his crew, trying to gauge their reactions. Toothpick looked pale, and a couple of the others were muttering under their breath, clearly unnerved. "Look, we didn't mean anything by it," Scarface said, his tone noticeably less aggressive. "We'll leave the kid alone. No harm done, right?" Caleb finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "No harm done? You tipped over my moped, shoved me, and mocked me for no reason. And now you want to pretend it's all fine?" Scarface opened his mouth to reply, but Caleb held up a hand, silencing him. "You think being loud and intimidating makes you strong. But real strength doesn't come from bullying people who are smaller than you. It comes from knowing when to walk away." The bikers shifted uncomfortably, the weight of Caleb's words sinking in. One of the younger bikers muttered, "He's right," earning a glare from Scarface. The tall man in the suit stepped forward again. "You've been given a chance to leave peacefully. I suggest you take it?" Scarface hesitated for a moment longer before nodding reluctantly. "All right, we're leaving." The bikers mounted their motorcycles, their movements hurried and uncoordinated. As they roared out of the gas station, none of them dared to look back. Once the bikers were gone, Caleb turned to the tall man in the suit. "Thank you," he said quietly, "but you didn't have to step in. I could have handled it." The man smiled faintly. "We know you could have, Mr. Reeves. But your father trusted us to look after you, and we take that responsibility seriously." Caleb nodded, his expression softening. "I appreciate it. Really." The man motioned to the other agents, who began heading back to the SUVs. "If you ever need us, you know how to reach out," he said. "Stay safe." As the SUVs drove away, the gas station returned to its quiet state. Caleb walked over to his moped, brushing off the dirt from where it had fallen. His calm demeanor belied the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The Iron Fangs stopped at a diner a few miles down the road, their earlier confidence shattered. They sat in a booth, their usual rowdiness replaced by uneasy silence. Toothpick was the first to speak. "Did you see the way those guys looked at us? Like we were nothing?" One of the older bikers shook his head. "That kid, he wasn't normal. There's something about him." Scarface remained quiet, staring at his coffee. For the first time in years, he felt small. He had built his life around projecting strength, but a single encounter with a quiet teenager had shaken him to his core. "We need to rethink some things," Scarface said finally. "Maybe it's time we stop looking for fights and start looking for purpose?" The others exchanged surprised glances, but none of them argued. The encounter at the gas station had left a mark on all of them, forcing them to confront their actions and the kind of men they wanted to be. As Caleb rode his moped back home, he couldn't help but replay the events of the evening in his mind. He had spent so much of his life trying to stay invisible, avoiding conflict and attention. But tonight had been different. For the first time, he had stood his ground, and it felt empowering. When he arrived home, the small house was quiet, its warmth a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere at the gas station. Caleb parked his moped and stepped inside, heading straight to his room. On his desk sat a framed photo of his father in uniform, his stern but kind eyes looking back at Caleb. "I hope I made you proud tonight," Caleb whispered, his voice barely audible. He placed the medallion on the desk next to the photo, its gleam catching the light. Caleb knew he couldn't rely on Division 7 forever. He had to learn to navigate the world on his own, using the lessons his father had taught him. The next day, Caleb returned to the gas station to retrieve his dropped wallet. The clerk, an older man named Gus, gave him a knowing look as he handed it over. "Word travels fast around here," Gus said. "Heard you had a run-in with the Iron Fangs last night?" Caleb shrugged, trying to downplay the situation. "It wasn't a big deal." Gus chuckled. "That's not what I heard. Seems like you gave those bikers something to think about." "Not many people can say that." Caleb smiled faintly, his confidence growing. For the first time, he realized that he didn't have to hide who he was. He could stand tall, not because of his connections or his father's legacy, but because of the strength he had found within himself. The Iron Fangs weren't the type to sit and wallow in silence for long. Scarface, their leader, was a man of action, even if that action had often been misguided. That night, as they sat in the diner, he couldn't get Caleb's words out of his head. Real strength doesn't come from bullying people. It comes from knowing when to walk away. Scarface stirred his coffee absently, staring into the dark liquid as if it held the answers to his life. His gang sat quietly around him, the usual banter replaced by an air of uncertainty. "I've been thinking," Scarface said finally, breaking the silence. His gravelly voice carried a rare vulnerability. "We've been living like this for years, picking fights, running the roads, acting like we're invincible. But what's it gotten us? Respect? Fear? Just emptiness." The younger bikers looked at him in surprise. Scarface had always been the unshakable leader, the man they looked up to. Seeing him like this was unsettling. "Maybe it's time for a change," he continued. "I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of pretending that being tough is all that matters." One of the older bikers, a man named Tex, nodded slowly. "That kid last night, he wasn't afraid of us. He had something we don't have, real strength. Maybe it's time we find some of that for ourselves." Toothpick, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "What are you saying, Scar? We just stop? Walk away from the life we've built?" Scarface met his gaze, his expression firm. "I'm saying we find a better way. There's more to life than this, and if a kid like that can face us down, then maybe we're not as tough as we think we are." The gang sat in silence, the weight of Scarface's words sinking in. For the first time, they began to imagine a different future, one where strength wasn't measured by intimidation, but by the ability to do good. The next time Caleb stopped at the gas station, Gus greeted him with a warm smile. The older man had always been kind to Caleb, treating him like a grandson. "Heard about what happened the other night," Gus said, leaning on the counter. "You've got more guts than I thought, kid." Caleb shrugged, embarrassed by the attention. "I didn't really do anything. It was just the right thing to do." Gus chuckled. "That's exactly why it's impressive. Most people would have crumbled in a situation like that. But you stood your ground. That takes real courage." Caleb smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride he hadn't experienced before. "Thanks, Gus. That means a lot." As he turned to leave, Gus called after him. "You ever need anything, you let me know, all right? You've got friends here." Caleb nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. For so long he had felt like an outsider in the town, keeping to himself and avoiding attention. But now he realized that he wasn't as alone as he thought. Over the next few weeks, the Iron Fangs began to shift their focus. Scarface, true to his word, led the gang in a new direction. They started volunteering at local events, using their resources to organize charity rides and fundraisers for causes like children's hospitals and homeless shelters. At first, the community was skeptical. The Iron Fangs had built a reputation as troublemakers, and their sudden change of heart raised more than a few eyebrows. But as the gang persisted, their actions began to speak louder than their past. One Saturday, the bikers organized a ride to raise money for a local school's music program. Scarface stood in front of the crowd, addressing the parents and teachers who had gathered. "We're not proud of everything we've done," he admitted, his voice steady. "But we're trying to make up for it. We want to show this community that we're not just a bunch of rowdy bikers, we're people who care. And we're here to help." The applause that followed was hesitant at first, but it grew as the crowd realized the sincerity of his words. For Scarface and his gang, it was a small but significant step toward redemption. As word of Caleb's encounter with the bikers spread, people in town began to see him in a new light. He was no longer just the shy, quiet kid who rode a beat-up moped. He was someone to be respected. At school, Caleb found himself speaking up more in class, surprising both his teachers and his classmates. He even joined the debate team, where his calm demeanor and quick thinking made him a valuable addition. One day, his debate coach pulled him aside after practice. "Caleb, you've got a gift," she said. "The way you hold your ground and present your arguments, it's impressive. Have you ever thought about pursuing public speaking?" Caleb shook his head, still adjusting to the idea that people saw him as anything more than ordinary. "I don't know. I've never really been good at being the center of attention." The coach smiled. "Sometimes, the people who don't seek attention are the ones who deserve it the most. Think about it." Her words stayed with Caleb, planting a seed of possibility. For the first time, he began to imagine a future where his voice could make a difference. Months later, Caleb was riding his moped through town when he spotted the Iron Fangs parked outside a community center. Curious, he pulled over and watched as the bikers unloaded boxes of food and supplies from their trucks. Scarface noticed Caleb and walked over, his expression neutral but respectful. "Hey kid," he said. "Didn't expect to see you here." Caleb shrugged, keeping his tone light. "Didn't expect to see you doing charity work." Scarface chuckled. "Yeah, well, people change. Sometimes it takes a wake-up call to realize you've been heading down the wrong road." Caleb nodded, appreciating the honesty. "It's good to see you doing something positive." Scarface extended a hand, his rough palm meeting Caleb's in a firm handshake. "Thanks, kid. And for what it's worth. I'm sorry. For the way we treated you that night." Caleb smiled, a genuine warmth in his expression. "Apology accepted." As Caleb rode away, he couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The encounter had come full circle, and he realized that even the most unlikely people were capable of change. Over the next few years, Caleb continued to grow into his own. He graduated high school with honors, earning a scholarship to study political science at a prestigious university. His experiences with the bikers in Division 7 had taught him the value of courage, resilience, and using his voice to stand up for what was right. At his graduation ceremony, Gus was there to cheer him on, along with several members of the Iron Fangs. Scarface had insisted on attending, proud of the young man who had inspired their transformation. As Caleb stood on stage, holding his diploma, he felt a surge of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. He wasn't just the shy kid at the gas station anymore. He was someone who had found his strength and learned to embrace it. And as he looked out at the crowd, he knew that this was only the beginning. As the Iron Fangs committed themselves to community service, their reputation underwent a remarkable transformation. They were no longer seen as the rowdy troublemakers who terrorized the town, but as a group of reformed men striving to make a difference. Their charity rides, food drives, and mentoring programs for at-risk youth gained widespread recognition. Scarface, once the embodiment of intimidation, became a spokesperson for second chances. Local news outlets picked up the story of the gang's transformation, interviewing Scarface about their newfound mission. "We've done a lot of things we're not proud of," Scarface admitted during a live TV interview. "But the important thing is that we're working to change. We want to prove that it's never too late to turn your life around." The community began to embrace the Iron Fangs, and their events drew larger crowds with each passing month. The bikers, who had once been fueled by ego and bravado, found new purpose in helping others. Caleb's debate coach wasn't the only one who had noticed his growing confidence. The principal of his high school approached him one day with an opportunity that caught him off guard. "Caleb, we're hosting a town hall event for the school," the principal explained. "We'd like you to give a speech about your experience standing up to the Iron Fangs and what it taught you about courage." Caleb hesitated, his initial instinct to shy away from the spotlight. But as he thought about the people who had supported him, his father, Gus, and even the men from Division 7, he realized he owed it to himself to take the opportunity. On the day of the event, the school auditorium was packed with students, parents, and community members. Caleb stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding as he faced the crowd. He took a deep breath, gripping the edges of the podium for support. "When I stood in that gas station months ago, I felt small," Caleb began, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his chest. "I felt like I was just a kid with nothing to offer, someone who couldn't stand up for himself. But that night taught me something important. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing to act, even when you're scared." The audience hung on his every word as Caleb shared his story, weaving in lessons about strength, kindness, and the importance of standing up for what's right. When he finished, the crowd erupted into applause, a standing ovation that left Caleb both humbled and exhilarated. After the town hall, Caleb was surprised to find Scarface and a few members of the Iron Fangs waiting for him outside the auditorium. Scarface extended a hand, his expression a mix of pride and gratitude. "You've got away with words, kid," he said. "You've grown a lot since that night at the gas station." Caleb shook his hand, smiling. "So have you. It's good to see you guys doing so much good." Scarface chuckled. "You gave us the kick we needed. We owe a lot of this to you." Over time, Caleb and the Iron Fangs formed an unlikely friendship. Scarface and his crew became mentors to Caleb, teaching him practical skills like motorcycle maintenance and self-defense. In return, Caleb shared his growing knowledge of public speaking and leadership, helping the bikers refine their messaging for their charity work. One afternoon, as they worked on a community project together, Toothpick turned to Caleb with a grin. "Never thought I'd be taking advice from a kid, but here we are." "You're something else, Caleb." Caleb laughed, his confidence shining through. "You guys aren't so bad yourselves." As Caleb approached his final year of high school, he began to think seriously about his future. The confidence he had gained from his experiences with the Iron Fangs and his speech at the town hall had opened his eyes to new possibilities. He wanted to make a difference, not just in his town, but on a larger scale. One evening, he sat down with Gus at the gas station, sipping a soda as they watched the sunset. "I've been thinking about college," Caleb said, breaking the comfortable silence. Gus nodded, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "That's great, kid. What do you want to study?" "Political science," Caleb said. "I want to learn how to lead, how to make changes that matter. Maybe even go into public service someday." Gus clapped him on the shoulder. "You've got what it takes, Caleb. You've got a good head on your shoulders and a heart that cares. The world could use more people like you." Encouraged by Gus's words, Caleb began researching colleges and applying for scholarships. He wrote essays about his experiences, sharing how the night at the gas station had been a turning point in his life. His honesty and passion shone through, earning him acceptance letters from several prestigious universities. As Caleb prepared for college, the Iron Fangs continued to build their legacy of redemption. Their charity work expanded to neighboring towns, and they partnered with local organizations to support initiatives like youth mentorship programs and addiction recovery services. Scarface, now a respected community leader, often spoke about their transformation at events and conferences. His speeches were raw and heartfelt, drawing from his own experiences and the lessons he had learned. "We were lost," Scarface admitted during one speech. "We thought strength came from fear and intimidation. But Caleb showed us a better way. He taught us that real strength comes from kindness, from helping others, and from owning up to our mistakes. The audience erupted into applause, and Scarface smiled, feeling a sense of pride he had never known before. Before leaving for college, Caleb organized a small gathering at the gas station to thank the people who had supported him. Gus, the Iron Fangs, and many of his classmates and teachers showed up, filling the parking lot with laughter and conversation. Scarface approached Caleb with a wrapped gift. "We wanted to give you something," he said, handing him the package. Caleb unwrapped it to reveal a custom-made leather jacket, the words "Real Strength" embroidered on the back. His eyes widened as he looked at Scarface and the other bikers. "This is incredible," Caleb said, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you. You've earned it, kid," Scarface said. "You're one of us now." As the evening wore on, Caleb felt a bittersweet mix of emotions. He was excited for the future but knew he would miss the people who had become like family to him. Standing in the glow of the gas station lights, surrounded by friends and mentors, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. The day Caleb left for college was bittersweet. Gus stood by the gas station, waving as Caleb rode past on his moped, the leather jacket from the Iron Fangs snug on his shoulders. The jacket had quickly become a symbol of everything he had overcome and the strength he had discovered within himself. Scarface and a few other bikers escorted Caleb to the edge of town on their motorcycles, their engines roaring as a farewell salute. As they reached the town's outskirts, Scarface pulled up beside Caleb and motioned for him to stop. "You're gonna do great things, kid," Scarface said, his voice gruff but sincere. "And if anyone gives you trouble, you let us know. The Iron Fangs have your back." Caleb smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thanks, Scar. I won't forget everything you've taught me." With a final nod, Caleb rode off toward his new life, the open road stretching before him like a promise. College was a world Caleb had never experienced before. The bustling campus, the diversity of people, and the endless opportunities to learn and grow overwhelmed him at first. But he quickly found his footing, drawing on the confidence he had built over the past year. He joined student organizations focused on leadership and public service, using his voice to advocate for causes he believed in. His story of standing up to the Iron Fangs became a powerful example of how courage and kindness could spark change. One of Caleb's professors, a charismatic political science lecturer named Dr. Morrison, took a special interest in him. During office hours, Dr. Morrison asked Caleb about his background and what had inspired him to pursue political science. "It's a long story," Caleb said with a smile. "But it all started at a gas station, of all places." Dr. Morrison chuckled. "Sometimes the most ordinary places hold the greatest lessons." "You've got potential, Caleb. Have you ever considered running for student government?" The idea had never crossed Caleb's mind, but the more he thought about it, the more it appealed to him. He decided to run for student council, using his story as the foundation of his campaign. Caleb's campaign slogan was simple but powerful: real strength, real change. He spoke about the importance of empathy, standing up for others, and creating a community where everyone felt valued. His speeches drew large crowds, his authenticity and passion resonating with students from all walks of life. During one debate, his opponent tried to paint him as inexperienced, questioning whether someone so young could handle the responsibilities of leadership. Caleb responded with calm confidence. "Experience is important, but so is perspective. I've learned that leadership isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about listening, learning, and bringing people together to make a difference. That's the kind of leader I want to be." The audience erupted into applause, and Caleb's campaign gained even more momentum. When the election results were announced, he won by a landslide, becoming one of the youngest student council presidents in the university's history. Back in Caleb's hometown, the Iron Fangs were thriving in their new roles as community leaders. They had officially registered as a non-profit organization, dedicating themselves to supporting at-risk youth and families in need. Scarface, now a regular speaker at schools and community events, often shared the story of the night they met Caleb. "That kid showed us what real strength looks like," he would say. "He taught us that we could be more than what we were, and that's a lesson we'll never forget." Their work caught the attention of a national news outlet, which ran a feature on their transformation. The story highlighted their charity rides, mentoring programs, and the unlikely friendship that had inspired it all. Scarface kept a framed copy of the article in their clubhouse, a reminder of how far they had come. Every time he looked at it, he thought of Caleb and the impact one quiet, determined teenager had made on their lives. During his first winter break, Caleb returned to his hometown, eager to see the people who had shaped his journey. The gas station was one of his first stops, and Gus greeted him with a bear hug. "Look at you, Caleb," Gus said, beaming. "College suits you." Caleb laughed, taking in the familiar sights and smells of the gas station. "It's good to be back. How's everything been here?" Gus grinned. "The Iron Fangs have been keeping busy. They've even got a new mentoring program for kids at the high school. You should stop by their clubhouse. They'd love to see you." Later that day, Caleb rode his moped to the Iron Fangs clubhouse, where he was greeted with cheers and hugs. Scarface clapped him on the back, his grin as wide as ever. "Look who it is," Scarface said. "Our favorite college kid. How's life treating you, Caleb?" Caleb spent the afternoon catching up with the gang, sharing stories about college and listening to their updates about the community projects they had undertaken. As the sun set, they gathered around a fire pit, the camaraderie as strong as ever. "You've done good, kid," Scarface said, his tone serious. "You've made us all proud." Caleb smiled, the warmth of their words filling him with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." As Caleb entered his final year of college, he began to think about the impact he wanted to make in the world. His experiences with the Iron Fangs and the lessons he had learned from his father had shaped him into someone who believed in the power of transformation and the importance of community. He decided to pursue a career in public service, focusing on policies that supported education, mentorship, and second chances. His ultimate goal was to create a world where people like the Iron Fangs could find their way back to the right path and where kids like him had the support they needed to thrive. When Caleb graduated, the Iron Fangs and Gus made the trip to his university to celebrate. As Caleb walked across the stage to receive his diploma, he looked out at the crowd and saw their familiar faces cheering him on. In that moment, he realized just how far he had come and how much further he could go. Years later, Caleb's name became synonymous with hope and change. His work in public service transformed countless lives, and he never forgot the lessons he had learned at the gas station that fateful night. The Iron Fangs continued their mission, expanding their non-profit work across the country. Scarface and his crew remained close to Caleb, their bond unshakable even as their lives took different paths. And in a quiet corner of the town where it all began, Gus kept a framed photo of Caleb, surrounded by the Iron Fangs, hanging on the wall of the gas station. It was a reminder of the power of redemption, the strength of community, and the impact one person could have on the world. After graduating college, Caleb was offered a position as a policy advisor for a nonprofit organization dedicated to youth empowerment. The role was a perfect fit, allowing him to use his personal experiences to influence real change. His first project involved creating mentorship programs in underfunded schools, a cause he was deeply passionate about. Caleb's work ethic and ability to connect with people quickly set him apart. He often visited schools to speak directly with students, sharing his story and encouraging them to believe in themselves. During one visit, a shy teenager approached him after his talk. The boy hesitated, then said, "I don't think I'm strong enough to make a difference like you did." Caleb crouched to meet the boy's gaze. "Strength isn't about being the loudest or the biggest," he said gently. "It's about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. You've got that strength inside you. I can see it." The boy's face lit up with a small smile, and Caleb felt a surge of fulfillment. Moments like these reminded him why he had chosen this path. While Caleb built his career in public service, the Iron Fangs were growing their nonprofit work across the state. Scarface and the gang had formed partnerships with local businesses, schools, and even law enforcement, creating a network of support for at-risk youth. One of their most successful programs was the Road to Redemption initiative, which paired troubled teens with mentors from the Iron Fangs. The program used motorcycle repair as a way to teach discipline, responsibility, and teamwork, while also giving the teens valuable skills. One of their star participants was a boy named Jesse, who had been on the brink of expulsion before joining the program. Under the guidance of Scarface, Jesse turned his life around, graduating high school with honors and earning a scholarship to study mechanical engineering. At a community event celebrating the program's success, Jesse gave a heartfelt speech. "The Iron Fangs saw something in me when no one else did," he said. "They gave me a second chance, and I'll never forget that." Scarface watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with pride. He couldn't help but think of Caleb, the catalyst for everything they had accomplished. As Caleb's influence in the nonprofit world grew, he began to consider the possibility of running for office. He knew it was a daunting path, but he also believed it was the best way to make a larger impact. With the encouragement of his mentors, including Dr. Morrison and Scarface, Caleb decided to run for a seat on the city council. His campaign was built on the principles he had lived by: real strength, real change. He focused on issues like education reform, mentorship programs, and community revitalization, using his own story as an example of what could be achieved with the right support. During a campaign rally, Caleb addressed a crowd of supporters. "I'm not here to tell you I have all the answers," he said, "but I am here to listen, to learn, and to fight for the changes we need. Together, we can build a community where everyone has a chance to thrive." The response was overwhelming, and Caleb's campaign gained momentum. The Iron Fangs played an active role in supporting him, organizing events, and spreading the word about his platform. One evening, during a break from campaigning, Caleb visited the Iron Fangs clubhouse. The gang had invited him to a dinner celebrating the success of their latest charity ride, which had raised thousands of dollars for a local homeless shelter. As Caleb entered the clubhouse, he was greeted with cheers and laughter. Scarface pulled him into a bear hug, his booming voice echoing through the room. "There he is, our future councilman." Caleb laughed, feeling the warmth of their camaraderie. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The election isn't over yet." The group settled around a long table, sharing stories and joking like old friends. Scarface raised a toast, his voice filled with emotion. "To Caleb, our brother, our inspiration, and the reason we're here tonight. No matter what happens, we're proud of you." The toast was met with cheers and clinking glasses, and Caleb felt a lump in his throat. These men, who had once been his adversaries, had become his greatest allies. Their journey together was a testament to the power of change and the bonds forged through mutual respect. On election night, Caleb gathered with his team and supporters to watch the results come in. The room was electric with anticipation, the air thick with a mix of hope and nerves. When the announcement came, Caleb's heart raced as the screen displayed the results. Caleb Reeves, elected to city council. The room erupted into cheers and applause, and Caleb was swept into a whirlwind of hugs and congratulations. Scarface and Gus, who had been watching from the back of the room, pushed their way forward to embrace him. "You did it, kid," Scarface said, his voice filled with pride. Gus grinned, his eyes misty. "Your dad would be so proud of you, Caleb." "We all are." Caleb stood at the podium to deliver his victory speech, the weight of the moment sinking in. "This victory isn't just mine," he said, his voice steady. "It belongs to everyone who believed in me, who gave me the courage to stand up and fight for what's right. Together, we'll build a future we can all be proud of." As a city councilman, Caleb worked tirelessly to bring his vision to life. He championed initiatives that improved education, expanded mentorship programs, and supported small businesses. His ability to connect with people and his unwavering commitment to his values earned him widespread respect. The Iron Fangs continued to support him, their bond as strong as ever. They often joked that Caleb was their honorary member, but in truth, he was much more than that. He was their family. Years later, as Caleb reflected on his journey, he thought back to the night at the gas station that had changed everything. It was a reminder of how far he had come and how much further he still wanted to go. And in a quiet moment, standing in his office, he looked at the medallion on his desk, the symbol of his father's legacy and the strength he had found within himself. With a determined smile, Caleb knew his story was just beginning. As Caleb settled into his role on the city council, his reputation as a compassionate and effective leader grew. He was known for his ability to connect with people on a personal level, always taking the time to listen to their concerns. his initiatives began to reshape the city, creating opportunities for those who had long been overlooked. One of Caleb's proudest achievements was the creation of a city-wide mentorship program called Bridge the Gap, modeled after the programs he had worked on with the Iron Fangs. The initiative paired students with mentors from various fields, providing guidance, inspiration, and a sense of belonging. At the program's launch event, Caleb stood before a crowd of students, parents, and mentors, his voice steady as he spoke. This program isn't just about helping students succeed, it's about building a community where everyone supports one another. Because when we lift each other up, we all rise. The applause that followed was thunderous, and Caleb felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew his father would have been proud of the path he had chosen. Meanwhile, the Iron Fangs' work had gained national attention. Their transformation from a feared biker gang to a force for good was featured in a documentary that highlighted their impact on communities across the country. The documentary, titled Roads of Redemption, followed the gang as they organized charity rides, mentored troubled youth, and shared their message of hope and change. Scarface became a reluctant public figure, appearing on talk shows and at conferences to share their story. While he was never entirely comfortable in the spotlight, he embraced the opportunity to inspire others. During one interview, Scarface was asked what had prompted their transformation. He smiled, his expression thoughtful. It was one kid. One brave, quiet kid who stood up to us when no one else would. He didn't yell or fight. He just showed us what real strength looks like. That kid changed our lives, and we've been trying to live up to his example ever since. The interviewer pressed further. Do you still keep in touch with him? Scarface grinned. Caleb? He's like family to us. We've got his back, just like he's always had ours. As the years went by, Caleb often found himself reflecting on his journey. Late at night, he would sit at his desk, the medallion his father had left him resting in his hand. It was a reminder of where he had come from and the values his father had instilled in him. One evening, Gus visited Caleb at his home. The old man was as sharp as ever, his smile warm as he handed Caleb a weathered envelope. Found this while cleaning out the gas station, Gus said. Figured you might want it? Caleb opened the envelope to find a letter from his father, written shortly before his death. The words were simple but profound, filled with advice and encouragement. Caleb, never let anyone make you feel small. You have a strength inside you that most people never find. Use it to do good, to help others, and to make the world a better place. I'm proud of you, son, always. Tears filled Caleb's eyes as he read the letter, the weight of his father's words settling in his heart. He had spent years trying to live up to his father's legacy, and in that moment, he realized he had succeeded. Years later, Caleb hosted a community celebration to honor the success of Bridge the Gap and the Iron Fangs' contributions to the city. The event was held at the same gas station where it had all begun, now transformed into a community hub thanks to the Iron Fangs' efforts. The celebration drew hundreds of people, including students, families, and community leaders. Scarface and the Iron Fangs arrived in full force, their motorcycles gleaming under the afternoon sun. As Caleb took the stage to address the crowd, he looked out at the familiar faces of Gus, Scarface, and the others who had been part of his journey. This celebration isn't about me, he said. It's about us, about what we can accomplish when we come together. None of this would have been possible without the people who believed in me and the lessons I've learned along the way. He paused, his gaze meeting Scarface's. And it all started right here, with a moment that changed everything. The crowd erupted into applause, and Caleb felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had shaped his life. As the event continued, he mingled with guests, sharing stories and laughs with old friends and new supporters alike. In the years that followed, Caleb's influence continued to grow. He was elected to higher offices, using his platform to advocate for education reform, criminal justice reform, and community development. Through it all, he remained grounded, never forgetting the values that had guided him from the start. The Iron Fangs expanded their work nationwide, becoming a symbol of redemption and the power of second chances. Their programs inspired similar initiatives in other cities, creating a ripple effect that changed countless lives. Gus, now retired, often visited the community hub at the gas station, sharing stories about Caleb and the Iron Fangs with anyone who would listen. The framed photo of Caleb with the Iron Fangs remained on the wall, a testament to the journey they had all shared. And for Caleb, the medallion from his father remained a constant reminder of the strength he had discovered within himself, and the belief that one person, no matter how quiet or unassuming, could change the world. As Caleb stood on the steps of a government building years later, now a prominent leader in his state, he took a moment to reflect on the road that had brought him here. He thought of the gas station, the Iron Fangs, Gus, and the lessons his father had taught him. He smiled, the words of his father's letter echoing in his mind. Never let anyone make you feel small. You have a strength inside you that most people never find. And with that, Caleb turned to face the crowd gathered before him, ready to continue his journey of service, strength, and change.